Good afternoon, and a very warm welcome to this session. I invariably end up with the onerous task of having to keep people away from a sumptuous lunch or people awake after a sumptuous lunch. I thought I'd escaped it this time, but nevertheless, fate has ruled otherwise. So, pardon me for sort of keeping you away. I'll try and finish it as fast as possible. But firstly, of course, welcome to the Institute of Customer Experience Management. And before I go further, I also need to acknowledge the fact that I'm here courtesy the graciousness of Dr. Ravi Chandran, who happens to be a friend, philosopher, and guide. And I hope I'm able to do justice to his expectation. Okay, so before we get into the main presentation, a quick look at who we really are, what we really do. Well, what's our vision? Our vision is to develop the study and application of the science of customer experience management to address challenges of growth and profitability of consumer-intensive businesses. So we work with consumer-intensive businesses and with students, of course, and, on the science of customer experience. And I'll skip the mission bit, which is to promote and enhance the culture of customer centricity by equipping all persons across organizational levels engaged or wishing to be engaged in the consumer-intensive business with the right mindset, skill set, knowledge, or process, thus enabling them to contribute to the maximization of customer lifetime value and profits. Fair enough. I'm not really getting into this, but this is just a flavor of what we do. The word customer repeats itself very frequently. So that's exactly, we try and look at businesses from the eyes of customer. We tell businesses how to look at the business, not from the eyes of a producer, but from the eyes of a customer, okay? So the topic that I've been given is service innovation, right? I'd like to start by asking a question. What does service mean to you? What is service? Anything offered to you for better of mine, okay? What does service mean to you? On time, what I want. Pardon? It should be on time and what I want it to. Okay, again, a fairly technical definition. Anybody else? Or what is service? Yep. No, I'm saying what does service mean to you? Yes, please. Yes, sir. Anyway, the reason I ask this question is that service means different things to different people, right? So how can we arrive at a universal definition of service? I would think that a near universal definition of service is to be of use or of help to somebody. Being of use or being of help to somebody is what service is all about. And this is a near, if somebody pretends to serve you, but ends up serving you, you're being a non-vegetarian, somebody ends up serving you a very delicious, you're a vegetarian, and somebody ends up serving you a very delicious non-vegetarian meal. Has he been of service to you or not? So we need to be of use of or help to whosoever we are trying to serve. That's the essence of service, right? So now on the innovation bit, right, I'd like to share my understanding at the cost of perhaps being repetitive, because while the conference is all about innovation, where does innovation come from? What is the genesis? What is the origin of innovation? So let's look at that. Okay, what is innovation? Derived from the Latin word innovatus, to renew or to change. So you either are renewing something or changing something is what innovation is. But then the next question is, can you and I innovate? Can the lay person innovate? Or does it require a genius to innovate? Yes or no? Can everybody innovate? Right. So if we were to look at the ability of everybody having the ability to innovate, in layperson's terms, it just means new ways of doing existing tasks. Okay? Just a new way of doing an existing task. But we will see, go forward and see what does innovation mean in the world of business. Now, you can say, so all of us are innovating, but here I think the context is mainly innovation in the context of business. So what would it really mean? Now, in the business context, new ways to manage people, product, process, physical and virtual environment in which business operates. If you were to see business, the entire business ecosystem is this. It involves people, it involves products, it involves processes, all right? It involves physical environment, which means you go to a showroom or you go to a bank branch. And today, of course, the virtual environment, because so much business is being done online, right? So this, in my humble opinion, is how I look at innovation, which means in layperson's terms, everyone is able to, has the ability to innovate. And business will typically innovate around product, process, people, virtual or physical environment, because that's what the consumer sees and interacts with, okay? So why innovate? The next question is, again, why do you need to innovate? Can somebody please give me an opinion? Why does business need to innovate? Can it just run the way it is running? Lots of businesses are running, is that right? Right? Let's look at a business, the way the bus transport system is operated in India, right? I don't think much has changed, excepting introduction of a new bus. It's the same bus stand, same guys getting in, even places where there are private sector, is allowed to operate buses. I don't think much has changed on that front. So, do we really need to innovate? Does business really need to innovate? Yes or no? If so, what are the benefits? Why does it need to innovate? Pardon? But why should I be interested in improving delivery? What's in it for me? Why should I break my head, put in more resources, put in all that to improve delivery? Yes, please? To compete, okay? Compete in, okay, let me, paucity of time, let me just share with you. First of all, is to enhance competitiveness in the existing marketplace, right? You're in a marketplace. Let me give you some illustrations. Multiple flavors of tea, Twinings. Before Twinings came to India, you had only one kind of tea. Chai was chai, right? Today, Twinings has a dozen different variants of tea. Mint tea, green tea, this tea, that tea. So this is, why has it done it? Because it has to enhance competitiveness within the same marketplace. Okay. Multiple tariff options. Vodafone, take a telecom company, it has multiple tariff options, aimed at various this thing. And it keeps on creating new tariffs. Why? Just to get a competitive edge in the same market in which they are in. Then, this is another example of a 24/7 pharmacy. It's a chain in Bombay. Here again, you see innovation. Why? Because when you keep yourself open 24/7, you have an edge vis-a-vis the other pharmacies, and you stand out and so on and so forth. I'm just giving you some practical, and of course, your home delivery plus credit, your local kirana. Why does is this innovation? Can the kirana manage to survive without giving you home delivery and credit? Yes or no? It can. But why does it do it? Is to enhance its competitive edge within the same, grocery marketplace, okay? The next is enter new markets. When you want to enter a new market, you need to innovate. I'll give you some examples. Premium watch market, Xylus Nebula. How many of you have seen this brand? Titan, right? Titan was in the mid-market. It just didn't have anything to take on Tag Heuer or, right now they've even got the Palace Connection Nebula and all that cost as much as an Omega, right? So Titan had to innovate its product range to get into a new market space, okay? Another one is budget hotels, Ginger, okay? Now, is this a new market? It's not a new market. They have not created a new market. All that they've done is that, you had the low-end hotels charging you 800, 700,000 rupees. They've created a new category, gone in and attacked a market which existed. But previously, Taj Hotels or Tatas did not have access to the market. You understand? So when you have a Taj, then can you compete against 1,000 rupee or the, the non-branded hotels. You can't, right? So this is another strategy. Third is, a good example is Indian education market, Harvard. You won't believe this, but Harvard University has opened a classroom, a model classroom in Bombay. So they bought Harvard, not in its entirety, but you have the faculty coming in and you have a Harvard classroom. So they have innovated that so that they can then now tackle the executive education market in India. And they haven't done it by transporting the whole of the university here. All they have done is build a model classroom. So once you're in the classroom, you are in Harvard University. You all with me? Right? And finally, of course, create new markets. Create a market where none existed. Give you an example of this. Mobile data, dongle. Before the dongle came in, there was no question of, there was no market for mobile data, right? Data was always saying you have to be plugged in. But today, there is a market for people say, no, I want to see my data while on the move. And, well, of course, the dongle has spawned a new market completely, okay? Budget airlines, before Air Deccan came in, people, it's only the rich who could fly. The new category of low-cost flying was what Air Deccan bought into this country. They created a new market from people who could never think of flying. Now, they sort of kind of substituted rail transport, right? And of course, another example is easy disposal of unwanted merchandise, eBay, again, classic, the market didn't exist. If I was stuck with with a watch I didn't want or a phone, I didn't know what to do with it. It lay in my drawer. But today, courtesy eBay, I can go on eBay and say, does anybody wants this watch? So it creates a new market for second-hand, unwanted merchandise. So summing up, it's enhance competitiveness, enter a new market, and create new markets. Okay? The most important thing for any change to qualify as a business innovation must be perceived by customers as offering a new benefit of sufficient appeal. You just can't, say, I've changed this feature. It was gray color, now I made it dark gray. That doesn't qualify for any. You've changed something. You've changed something. Okay, I changed the handle, right? Now, just the shape of the handle. Does it really offer sufficient appeal? Can you push your product on the basis of that innovation? You can't. So it must be perceived by customers as offering a new benefit of sufficient appeal. Otherwise, it will really not qualify as innovation in the business space. All of you with me? Right? Okay. Now, product service innovation. You've seen business innovation, service innovation. Now, let me ask you, do we as consumers really buy products or services? Or what do we really buy? Pardon? We buy benefits, right? He says we buy benefits. Anybody else has a different opinion? Yep. We buy experience. Yes, okay. So let me pose this question. Is this an organizational view of looking at things or this is a consumer view? What is it? Product service, does it exist? Do we buy a telephone, a SIM card, or do we buy the ability to connect with the whole world? What do we buy? Ability to connect. So I would think that, product service innovation is a bit of a organizational way of looking at it. The consumer doesn't look at the business like that. And, for example, do we as customers buy products or services or solutions to challenges faced by us to make life more satisfying? What do we buy? We buy solutions. We don't buy products or services. But business talks products and services, and that's why business doesn't really connect the way it should connect with consumers, okay? So, example, a ticket on an Indigo flight or a punctual, safe and comfortable journey to our destination. What do we really buy? Do we buy a flight ticket? Or do we buy, we buy comfort, we buy safety, we buy punctuality. That's why we fly, right? So this is how a consumer looks at a business, and business people continue to sell, we operate flights. Really speaking, nobody is really interested. If you operate flights, everybody operates flights. right? So how are you going to distinguish yourself? Should we then innovate around products or around customers? Whom should we innovate around? Around customers, right? This is called service logic innovation. So what we really need to look at is neither product innovation nor service innovation, but an amalgam of the two called service logic innovation. I'm sure most of you are exposed to this term the first time, which means nothing but making the shift from product service orientation to customer enable orientation. The idea is that why is the customer engaging with me? Because he is looking for a satisfying solution to a challenge which he's facing to make his life. Why do we use products? I think products fit into the scheme of things from the time we start the day to the time we finish the day. That's where products take relevance. All that we're looking for is perhaps more comfort, more security, more fun and excitement, more status. And that's why you use products. Products have no meaning per se. Life has meaning because I want to make it more enjoyable, more meaningful, okay? So making the shift, look at the iPad. Is it a tablet device? Or is it a quality of life enhancement device? What is the iPad? If it were to be sold as a tablet, Apple's valuation would not have been 25% of what it is. Today, Apple is the most valuable company on the face of this earth. And simply because Steve Jobs says, it's not about the device. It's the joy of ownership. It's the joy of ownership that I sell. And how do I help people lead more meaningful, enjoyable lives through my products? That's why the products exist, and that's why consumers buy me. Okay? So how do you innovate the entire customer ecosystem instead of just looking at the product or service? Let's look at how the structure looks. There's a core product or service which has embedded features. You take a two-in-one, right? That's the core product. It has volume, it has treble, it has bass, it has certain, it has features, right? Those features might or might not be relevant to me, but it comes frozen. The features are frozen. Can you change the features if you want? You can't, because it's embedded into the product. So the problem with features is that the moment you come up with a feature, somebody else comes up with a feature. Today, if you look at the basic composition of any product, it's by and large the same. What's the difference between two banks? What's the difference between two telecom companies? What's the difference between two iPads, barring some very, what you call cosmetic difference? The product is frozen. And today, people quickly replicate or catch up. So you might have, at best, a very little advantage. And you can't create new products every day because it has a whole manufacturing cycle, right? So around the products, you have the acquisition channel and delivery options. Can you innovate around the acquisition channel and delivery options? I'll show you how this is done. You have pricing and payment options. Can we customize pricing and payment options? Yes, the scope to do that is much, much larger. We have non-core feature enhancement options, which means which reside outside the product. I'll illustrate all this. It's not a part of the product, but still enhances product performance. Then you will have usage support options, which means after-sales service. When I have a problem with the product, who do I go to? What kind of hand-holding does the company do where, my usage support is concerned? And finally, of course, disposal and renewal options, which means that if I want to stop using the product from tomorrow, can the company help me in disposing of the current one and getting a new one? Right? So this is the entire consumer consumption ecosystem, and the product per se is a very, very small part of the whole system. You agree with me? Yes? Okay. Now let's look at some of the examples. So what are you really innovating around is the customer as either a buyer or a user or a payer. Let me give you an illustration. A mother is going to buy clothes for the children, right? Is she a buyer? Yes, she is. Is she a payer? No, the father is earning the money. Okay? And is she a user? No, the child is going to use the money. But in certain cases, when you and I buy a watch, I might be the same buyer, payer, user, right? So when I travel on my company's work, I'm the user. I'm not the buyer because my travel agent is buying the product or my travel department is buying it for me. And I'm not the payer because the company pays for me. But when I travel on my own, I pay, I buy, and I, So these are the three roles a customer plays while engaging with products or services. There's buyer, there's payer, there's user. You can be all of the three, but on all these three fronts, you have an opportunity to innovate. Saying, am I appealing to the buyer? Am I appealing to all three? So that's how it works. Now I'll give you an example, right? In innovation in core products. Now, we went into core products earlier, right? So there's a core in the center and there's a, basically operates around add a feature, remove a feature, change a feature. Let me illustrate this, okay? Credit cards. Credit card, debit card, prepaid card, airline card, gift card. What have you done? The basic product has remained the same. You added a feature or taken away a feature. So this is the limitation on innovation around the basic product. Okay, let's look at hotels. Standard rooms, superior rooms, executive rooms, smoking rooms, non-smoking rooms, suites, theme suites. Which means, you go to some really expensive hotel, they will have the Maharana suite and the Maharana, it's all themed. But each one of this is an innovation from the core product, where either something has been added or removed, right? Airlines, economy, premium economy. It doesn't exist in domestic. Premium economy is, in the economy class, the first row is a little differently configured. And they charge you a premium. So within economy, there is premium economy, there is executive class or business class, and there's first class. So all of it, what have they done? It's the same aircraft, they put in a new seat, or, meals different. So you add a feature, minus a feature, or change a feature. Which means meals, you change the feature. Instead of having 3 choices, you have 5 choices. So that's nothing but adding new, changing the features, okay? Telecom, 2G, Edge, 3G, 4G. Again in the core product. Banks, savings account, current account, wealth management, corporate, corporate banking, investment banking. But the issue is that in the core products, it's very easy to replicate. Very quickly people will catch you. And this becomes the basic expectation anybody has, So there will be, it kind of becomes industry standard. But let's look at innovating the customer ecosystem, which I talked of earlier. Pricing and payment options. Let me give you some illustrations. Acquisition, delivery options, usage support and disposal, okay. Telecom, prepaid, postpaid, tenure pricing. You know what tenure pricing means? I remember when I was the CEO of a telecom company, I launched a 1-year plan. That's tenure pricing. Lifetime plan. That's tenure pricing. Pulsing. What are the biggest innovation telecom saw in recent times in this country? The 1 paisa per second. That's pulsing. You can innovate on pulsing. You can innovate on tenure. You can innovate on payment type. Prepaid, postpaid, So that gives you an idea of cars, right? Mercedes, cash down, we all know, installment. But today, the reason why the number of Mercedes and Audis and BMWs have shot up like anything in Bombay is because they're now offering you lease. You can lease a Mercedes. You don't need to buy a Mercedes. You just pay the monthly lease. End of 5 years, the car is taken back, so you're not stuck with it. And that has changed the entire landscape for premium cars. I think the volume of sales have gone up almost twice. The lease option, okay? So this is how it does. This is how it increases your competitiveness. Shopping, take Big Bazaar for instance, cash, credit card. You can have cash back. You heard of cash back, right? That's a payment innovation. You pay 100 rupees, you get 20 rupees back. And you get bonus points. You can get bonus points if you buy on this card. You go to Axis Bank in Big Bazaar or whatever, they will say, if you use the Axis Bank card, we will give you bonus points, shopping points. So some flavor of what this kind of innovation would look like. Delivery and, acquisition and delivery options. This is a laundry which is just opened up close to my house. It's an international chain. You can acquire a customer on-site, off-site. Then home pickups can be offered. Then fixed delivery time, which means I want it at 9 p.m. because I'm not at home. The whole day my house is locked. I want it at 9 p.m. on Wednesday when I'm going to be at home. So you can offer fixed time deliveries. You can offer overnight deliveries. Again, that's a special service saying, okay, I'm traveling tomorrow and I need this suit ready. Can you do it overnight for me? So that's another option, which is again, the delivery and acquisition option. Do you want your shirt folded or in a hanger? We have preferences. Do we like being asked? So do you like your shirt being folded like they give you in a hotel? They always ask you. So these are typically how you innovate around the delivery option. When I come to deliver, I can carry it in a hanger, I can give it to you. Depends, I have a choice. Okay? Let's say consumer electronics, Sony. Company store, you can sell from a company store. There are branded Sony stores. Multi-brand stores, which means you go to a Vijay Sales. I don't know, Vijay Sales is very popular in Bombay, Sony, Moni or a Chroma. You can go home delivery with installation. You can say, I'll deliver it at home. This is again how you acquire and deliver the product where the variation is happening with installation. Healthcare, let's take Fortis. How many different versions can a healthcare company take? You have hospitals. You can have satellite clinics. You can have telemedicine. You can have mobile clinics. And you can have online, online services. So a hospital can actually deliver its services in 5 or 6 different types. And it appeals to various different types of people, and that's where the innovation is really occurring. How much time do I have? Okay. Non-core features, let's say mobile store. I was connected with the founding of this company. We did some stuff interesting, data transfer, which means transfer from this phone to that phone. Data storage. It's very vital to the phone, but it doesn't reside within the phone. Somebody is doing it for you. Theft insurance. Price protection, which means if you buy and within 7 days the price changes, you can come back and claim a refund. Airlines, let's say Indigo, this is what they offer now. Pre-ordered meals. It's a budget airline, right? So pre-ordered meals. What else can they innovate? I mean, the other ones they don't do, but I'm just saying. They can give you pre-ordered pillows and blankets. Why don't they do this? I can't understand. Because very often I get on the flight and say, do you have a pillow? Even if I want to pay for one, I can't. I should be able to pre-order it, right? Reading material. I could even order for reading materials. They give me a choice of magazines and say, fine, I want these 2 magazines, I'll pay for it. But I should have an option, right? Will it make my journey more comfortable? Of course. Can Indigo provide it? Yes, of course it can. If it can order pre-ordered meals, it can give you a pillow, pre-ordered blanket, so that when the lady comes with the meal, she says, this is your pillow or blanket, I want to sleep. Because sometimes you feel very cold on an airline, So special check-in, now they've already started. They charge you 200 rupees if you have to get into a special check-in queue. And so that if a guy wants to check in, it makes his check-in mode smoother. It costs 200 rupees. It started in Bombay. Usage support. I think one of the best examples of this is the Lexus, particularly. Lexus is not launched in India. How many of you, this is Toyota's premium brand. It gave all Mercedes and everybody a big run for its money. But Lexus typical has service centers. It has home pickup and drop. It has 24 hours helpline. You could be anywhere in the US and you can call. You could have mobile services, which means it'll go pick you up from there, take over your car. You could have backup vehicles, which means it'll come, they'll provide you a backup vehicle when they come to repair, take over your car, give you another Lexus standby so that you can drive. Remote assistance, which means tell you from a remote location, if you diagnose what is wrong with your car, because it's all computerized and fed into a central system, and they can guide you step by step and say, sir, do A, B, C, D steps, and the car will come back, So this is, again, a classic case of after-sales service, what we talk of usage support options. And auto reminder services, which means that if there is any upkeep, you get automatic reminders. Finally, disposal and renewal. Let's take a company like Dell. Again, it doesn't do what it does. They can offer you a buyback. Everyone offers you a buyback. But can they offer you a guaranteed price buyback? Say if this is 2010 model, if you get it back by 2012, I will pay you X value. Would you like that? Will it reassure you? Okay. Can they offer you, of course, buyback, guaranteed price buyback, upgrade concessions? You move to the next model, we'll give you a higher concession. Will that prompt you to think about moving to a higher model? Yes or no? Okay. And, it makes sense for the company because on the higher model, they probably make more money. So they can split it with you and say, if you go back to the same model, you get this, you go back to the next model. Actually, car companies are not offering it. In my view, that's the easiest way for getting somebody who has a Honda City to trade to a Honda Civic. Saying, we will give you an additional concession. If you buy a Honda City, again, you will get 3 lakhs rupees as value. You buy a Honda Civic, you will get 4 lakhs rupees as value for your existing car. Will that prompt people to look at higher upgrades? Okay, so that's okay. And, well, the question then is that how do you make this approach systemic? How do you innovate around the ecosystem? How do you do service innovation at a systemic level? How can you make it a part of the company's culture and DNA? The answer is, of course, first of all, is all parts of the organization must be focused on the common ground of creating an integrated, memorable, and favorable service experience. You agree that this is what you're looking for when you go and engage with the product or a service? You want a memorable experience. You want to be happy, right? And as a company, we want you to remember that moment of truth for a long time. Second is, mapping of customer expectations is the first step of the journey. You have to know what the customer's expectations are, because all innovation, if it has to be of use or of help to you, must know what your expectations are. Is that right? So can I really serve you without knowing what you expect? Otherwise, I'm doing self-service. I still think I'm serving you. But I'm doing self-service because, you are expecting X, I give you Y. But I think, that's a part of my job and I'm doing a great job, Use blueprinting to create a visual depiction of the various moments of truth and the steps in the process. I'll illustrate what this is. There's a blueprinting methodology which will capture what are these situations where the customer and the company are engaging, either on a person-to-person or a person-to-machine. And, it's fairly simple, but very interesting. I'll share with you. Plot the process against the organization structure. That how many points is the customer going around before, he's getting what he realizes? What does it involve within the company? Highlight the following first. Customer actions, person to person and person to machine. When we are engaging with the company, either we're engaging with the IVR or we're engaging with the website or we're engaging with people. So the two mean very different things. Second is on-stage employee actions, which means on-stage means people whose face the customer can see. That's how service business is looked at. On-stage means a guy who works in the showroom. Right? So this on-stage, which means the on-stage guy is also having to perform a person-to-person, which is between him and the customer, and maybe he's entering some data, which is person-to-machine. Okay? Backstage employees means people who still engage with customers, but are not visible. It's, say, a call center person. He's a backstage, but he's talking to the customer directly. Anybody handling customer correspondence. He is corresponding with the customer, but the customer can't see his face. There again, you have to look at, person to person, person to machine, what are the involvements. Off stage or support. There are people within the organization who are backing the whole process, but who are not either on stage or backstage, but they don't interact directly with the customer. They interact more with internal customers, which means people who serve the customer become their internal customer, either on stage or off stage. Physical evidence. Physical evidence would mean all the tangibles that the customer comes across while dealing. It's like saying when I go to the showroom, the furniture, the cleanliness, you know, the painting, the music, whatever I can actually see and feel is the physical evidence which is involved. Maybe even the product is the physical evidence. And finally, potential failure points and service recovery. So amongst all these moments of truth, where can failure happen? And how will you plug those failures? Which is service recovery, how will you put it? Okay, let me illustrate this. Let's take blueprint for overnight hotel stay. Physical evidence, ad website, hotel exterior parking, cart for bags, empty dress, desk, paperwork, lobby, elevators, hallway, rooms, cart for bags, empty, okay, then the menu, delivery tray, food appearance, all physical appearance, food, room amenities and bathroom, bill, lobby, hotel, exterior parking. I think this is the physical evidence which the customer encounters. Customer actions, make the reservation, arrive at hotel, give bags to bellboys, check in, go to room, receive bags, call room service, receive food, you know, sign the bill, tip the waiter, eat, sleep, and then check out and leave. This is typically what the customer actions are, right? This is relating back to the last slide. On stage, visible contact employees, again, greet and take the bags, right? Process of registration, the people there in the front office, deliver the bags into the room, deliver the food, and process checkout. The checkout process, again, he is interacting with the, you know, the reception people, right? The cashier. Backstage, invisible contact employees, backstage, somebody making the reservations when you call the hotel, this is backstage. Take bags to room, somebody, you don't really, you know, there's somebody happening who picks it up remotely and goes and has it put in the room. Take the food order, somebody you're calling up and registering for the food. You call room service, you call housekeeping. There are people there who are talking to you but who are not visible to you. Because the guy who delivers is not the guy who takes the product, takes the order. And then support backstage is the reservation system, people who run the reservation system. And then registration, room registration system, who prepare the food. The chef is completely off stage. You'll never see the chef. But he's the guy who's making the food. And the registration system, of course. This is, so basically it's the preparing food, registration system, and reservation system. This is what happens in the backstage. Of course, a lot of housekeeping also happens, but you can really get into massive detail. But just to give you a flavor of what does the physical evidence means, what does the on-stage employee do, what does the backstage employee do, what does the off-stage employee do, and you know, so that and how do you blueprint each of the action where it is either person to person or person to machine, and how does the flow occur. So this is a typical service blueprint. And finally, of course, what culture, what drives innovation in an organization? We heard a lot of people share their thoughts on that. I'd like to share my views. I think I'll start by quoting two very renowned management people, one an academic guru, the other a global CEO of enormous standing. I think the first thing is companies need to take customer first perspective to succeed with innovation, and said by none other than Peter Drucker. I'm sure there is nobody who has had any exposure to management and not heard of Peter Drucker. So he says, companies need to take the customer first perspective if it has to succeed with innovation. The second person I'm quoting is the CEO of Procter & Gamble globally. P&G, of course, is a 150 years old company. It's a oversight. It's key to successful innovation is that the consumer is the boss mindset. This is Alan Lafley, the previous chairman of Procter & Gamble. I think it's a 120 billion company. The people who invented consumer products, right? P&G is, 150 years old. And in India, what do they make? Any idea what P&G makes in India? Pardon? Head and Shoulders shampoo? Yeah? Yeah, Pantene, various other products. But globally, they are the largest company. Alan Lafley. Create culture that supports new ideas, risk-taking, and failure. I think no company has been able to innovate around the service space as much as Virgin. Because all that Virgin has done is pick up any run-on-the-mill business, do a innovation around it, and then give it, charge a premium. And I think the founder of the company is the ultimate risk taker because he's the guy who flew on the hot air balloon across the Atlantic. And when Virgin launched in India, in Bombay, he slid down the exterior of the Oberoi Towers in Bombay. He rappelled down, personally. That was the way he launched Virgin in India. So risk-taking is inherent in the DNA of Virgin. Google, of course, invest in employee capability enhancement, believe in building human capital. I think nobody has done it better than Google in terms of building human capability, human capital, and investing in. It is perhaps today, it's rated as the #1 employer across the world year after year. Last 3 years, I think Google is the #1, and from an employer perspective. Toyota is very good with deploying and leveraging technology. I think Toyota has the largest innovation budget. It has a $9 billion innovation budget. And surprisingly, even Microsoft has a $9 billion. It's not that well known. But Toyota, we associate with technology, cutting edge products. And, they're always coming up with new features and seeing, I think, the hybrid car, the electric car. Most of it is Toyota's innovation, right? And Harley Davidson, this is a company that's just come to India. It's an iconic motorcycle company, constantly dialogue with customers to understand desired and unanticipated needs. How do you, Harley is a cult, in 1984, Harley was bankrupt. Or was it 86? That's when they filed for bankruptcy. Between 86 and 2006, Harley has paid a return of 80% on capital every year to shareholders. 80% for the last 20 years. And all that it sold is motorcycles. Nothing has changed on that. But the way it has engaged the Harley owners group, which they have, is what makes Harley unique. And that it creates relevance for its owners by only dialoguing with them and say, how can we give you a more enjoyable outdoor life? It's not about the motorcycle at all. Harley Davidson believes that it's in the business of giving the customer a more enjoyable outdoor life. Because that's what people use their Harleys for. They go off for long distances. And finally, of course, create dedicated team and time allocation for innovation. Again, this is a company which perhaps is one of the most innovative companies on the face of this earth. Any idea what is their specialty? No? Tapes, but more important, how many of you have seen a stick-it notepad? How many of you have seen the Scotch-Brite way of cleaning? It innovates every day. I mean, 3M is synonymous with innovation, the Minnesota mining industry. So that brings me to the end of my presentation, and I just like to end with a very favorite quote of mine. I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I woke and saw that life was service. I acted and behold, service was joy. Rabindranath Tagore. Interestingly, by the way, let me tell you where I picked up this quote. Any idea where I could have come across this quote? This quote I picked up from a book written on Starbucks. The Starbucks way is where they have quoted this. And Starbucks, of course, in recent times, again, is one of the most successful companies on the face of this earth. Thank you so much. Any questions? Questions? Any questions? Yes? Questions, please. 5 minutes. Yep, 5 minutes. 1:30, I brought it to a fairly... Yeah, any questions? I'll try my level best to give you a... Yes, please. Okay, let me tell you this. Is innovation a question of budget or is it mindset? Okay, let me ask you, what's common between a small business and a big business? What is it? What is common? Reach is different. What is common? Customer. And what is the other thing which is common? What? People. See, please understand one thing. Business is nothing but people serving people. End of the day. All products, all processes are intermediaries. So ultimately, what do I need to innovate and create relevant innovation for you? I need to put myself in your shoes and understand, how are you trying to manage your life? How can I do it better for you? All the innovations which I talked about in the ecosystem, nothing really involved money. It all involved thought. You agree with me? It all involved putting myself in the customer's shoes and say, does this guy want it folded? Because if I don't have a big cupboard in my house, I probably want the laundry folded. And if I got a big hanging cupboard, I want it. You know, some people don't like fold because it creates crease. But I like fold. I think it makes the shirt look new. I always get a feeling when I open a hotel laundered shirt that I'm wearing a new shirt. It gives me a different thrill. So we all have different preferences. But you need to talk to me to find out, what do I prefer? What do I like? And create options for me. So it's a complete mindset issue in my view, which means, how do I do this existing task in a new way? There is no rocket science in my view. I'm talking of everyday innovation. I'm not talking of disruptive, because disruptive happens once in a blue moon. It doesn't happen every day. But you can innovate and create an edge for your business on a daily basis. You agree with me? So 3 cheers. Thank you. Any more questions? I'm sorry, I'm running away. I'm not. Yes, please. Yeah, actually, you know what? That's a whole subject in itself. A good way of understanding that is by referring to Maslow's pyramid. It has 4 stages, which is basic. You know, basic kya hota hai? I'll give you telecom, for instance. There are regulator stipulated norms. कि ये grade of service आपका होना चाहिए, इतने शहरों में आपका होना चाहिए. If you don't have that, the regulator will shut you down. 1 minute. Let me finish. The next level is expected. You know what is expected? Expected is what everybody provides. हर कोई देता है, which means, am I as good as the worst competitor? If I'm as good as the worst competitor, can I survive? Yes, I can. There'll still be some people who are buying from my worst competitor who might buy from me. Right? The next is desired. Now what is desired? Desired is the best in class I've ever experienced, which means I'm a telecom user, I've been to Japan, and I've seen the streaming of live video on my, I will start expecting it. That's desired standard for me, because I'm hoping someday it will come to India. Always when so what's the best in class I've ever encountered? The 4th is unanticipated, which means that understanding why you use this product. Which means, see, we use products for 5 reasons. Either for more security, or for more convenience, or for enhancing our productivity, or for fun and excitement, or for status. There is no 6th dimension for which you use a product. All of us will use it for one of the 5 or all of the 5, and it'll have different degrees of importance. When I deal with a bank, what do I look for first? कल बैंक तो बंद नहीं हो जाएगी ना? और हम घर में पैसा क्यों नहीं रखते? क्योंकि चोरी हो सकती है. So if the bank is robbed every day, I will not put the money in the bank.
So is it like identifying the customer's unmet requirement?
Okay, now, within the first 2 levels, when you are at basic and expected, what we term as the zone of disaster, means you fail in that expectation, customer will say, thank you very much, bye-bye. The top 2, expected, desired and unanticipated, are the zone of delight. I'm not finished, okay, zone of delight. And in between lies the zone of tolerance, which is between expectation and desired. Means क्या है? मैं वो चाहता हुआ हूँ, but फिलहाल ये चलेगा, क्योंकि कोई नहीं दे रहा है उधर. You know, nobody is giving me 4G, although I want 4G, so I'm settling for 3G now. But the day somebody offers me 4G, I'll jump there. So I'm tolerating you till I do not have an alternative. So it's zone of tolerance, zone of delight, and zone of, disaster. So that's the way you map customer expectation. There's a very easy way to look at it is, regulator क्या बोलता है? I cannot adulterate my bloody oil beyond the point, right? वरना वो food inspector आके मेरी दुकान, he will stop my factory. So that is regulator-led, which means bare minimum without which the government will not allow you to stay in business. The next is expected. सबसे फालतू कौन सा है? उसके बराबर हूँ क्या? I can still be in business, right? I can still continue to be in business. Then thing is, then is desired and then unexpected, unanticipated. Any more questions? Right, thank you so much. Thank you.